welcome one and all to this fun competition. Except nobody knows if there's any opposition. Face so friendly, smile disarms, everything's good, no cause for alarm. Cause I'm like you, and likewise the same. But for you this is work, and for me it's a game. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying. Next round starting, believe that I'm playing. Introduction's not needed, been completed so to speak. Since I always act familiar each and every time we meet. We're not colleagues, you've never even heard of me. But I'm just so polite, and you're returning every courtesy.
The social-engineer.org podcast number 40.
Number 40.
That was pretty good, Dave. Thanks.
Thank you. I was trying to stay professional.
You know, for being in a Panera Bread, I guess it's not too bad.
Yeah, I'm in a Panera Bread, but it's, I always got to go in weird locations. I guess that's not too weird, though.
No, it's not. Not like getting an EKG or something like that.
No, I had one of those a couple days ago, though.
Nice. Oh, yeah, by the way, you were in the hospital. How was your heart?
It's good. I think it was just stress-related. Nothing to worry about. My heart is good and solid and working hard.
Stress and because of your candle parties.
Yeah, stress from what? You have 2 kids in the startup business. I don't really know what you have to worry about.
Yeah,
it's really just a low-stress situation all around. I have nothing to worry about. I'm good.
Yeah, excellent.
Candle parties are the top of it, though.
They're the reason for the heart problems.
Yeah, the candle party caused my heart issues.
Actually, there's a study done out of UCLA that links candle parties directly to heart failure.
I've seen that. People are dying left and right. It's a big pandemic.
Yeah, it's on the internet. I saw it.
The burning of the candles are actually helping to contribute, let alone the stress of the preparation for the party.
That's right. It's a really bad situation all around.
Carcinogens.
You can eliminate a lot of the stress by not going through the painstaking process of making that multicolored layer Jello. You know what I'm talking about?
Obviously,
they have it every Christmas and candle party. The green, white, red Jello. If you don't make that, you eliminate stress by 30%.
Obviously, Jordan has experienced that candle partying.
I candle party hard.
Yeah, it's new in the art of charm. You teach people.
It's the latest thing in LA and Vegas. You go to the club, but instead of bottle service, you just get candles.
That's great.
Scented candles.
Yeah, the way to pick up chicks. Get a candle party going.
Whoever's got the biggest candle.
So not much has changed. Yeah.
No.
Except for now, it's literally on the table.
So before we go down that path, how is things at the Art of Charm?
Things are great. We're almost sold out 5 months in advance. So we have a couple seats, but for the most part, for the next 5 months, we're packed up nice and tight. Although we added a Vegas program date, so anybody looking to come in from the se.org podcast can get in. And we have a couple guys who came in from the podcast, so that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's dudes.
Yeah, Jordan, your voice is sounding a little robotic.
Crap, really?
Yeah.
It must be that robot voice implant that I just had installed. Dang. I'll try and fix that.
Okay.
I guess when the guest gets on. But yeah, things are good. Biz is good, and if guys want to get in on this stuff before we jack our prices up again due to demand, they got to hit me up. So don't be sitting around thinking, I should do that.
So when is your price increase going to take place?
When does this show come out? Because I probably shouldn't say, hey, and then it's like
tomorrow.
This comes out
It comes out tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be like January.
That's going to be interesting because you said there's only a few spots available for the next 5 months. So
right, yeah, we gotta hire some coaches up in this piece so we can expand.
Yeah, seriously, and that's a good problem to have. Definitely a better problem to have than the opposite one of that.
Right, yeah, where you're having candle parties to make ends.
Yeah. Poor Dave.
Dude, like, can we just not use that word anymore? Like, it just every time it happens, I flash back to like Iraq and getting bombed and getting shot at.
What, candle party?
Please stop.
Yeah. So
it's like you have flashbacks. You hear the helicopters? I hear the women coming. They're knocking at the door. They got that multi-layered Jello.
Ping, how are things at your top secret job?
Things are going really well. Everyone's trying to make their Q4 numbers because I guess apparently some companies actually have to make money because they have employees that actually have to be paid. I don't want to talk about the things I can't talk about at the old Accuvant, but I do want to talk about this is the season for giving, although I think people should give all year round. And I have my top 3 charities. Number 1 is Toys for Tots. So toysfortots.org, you can find out where you can drop off a toy for a child whose family cannot provide for them. Number 2 would be the Warrior Foundation, which is a warriorfoundation.com, and they help wounded veterans recover and assimilate back into domestic everyday life. So I think that's really, really important, support the people who've fought for our freedom. Yay, Dave. And the last one would be Habitat.
We support Dave with candle parties.
Stop.
I support Chris with lemon parties.
Oh,
You're
stop.
supporting his post-traumatic stress. The last charity would be Habitat for Humanity, so building homes and shelters for those who are completely a lot less fortunate than most of us here.
Well, that's very nice, Ping. Thank you for bringing attention to all of that. And Dave, besides your beautiful candle party happening today, you're going to enjoy, what do you got going on?
A new version of the Social Engineer Toolkit should be released next week. I'm still working out some bugs, but been working on this now for probably about a month and a half. Some really, really cool stuff.
What can possibly be new in set?
So typically, like when you generate like the alphanumeric shellcode and the shellcode injection through PyInjector, it would generate shellcode every single time through Metasploit. Instead, I actually patched the shellcode real time inside of set, so it's hard. The shellcode is basically programmed in the set now, and so it doesn't require you to continuously generate through Metasploit, which is a really good efficiency. But then I'm also releasing something called Multi-Injector, which when you're doing a pen test, if you go and you do a social engineer attack, typically you may go over 443 or you may go over 80 and hope that it gets out. Well, with Multi-Injector, what it does is it wraps a whole bunch of shellcode into one payload. So, for example, say you want to try to get out 21, 22, 23, 53, 80, 443. It actually bundles up all of those pieces of shellcode into the payload itself, and then shoots it out so that you have a higher success rate of getting out the connections. Yeah,
that sounds really awesome, Dave.
And it all loads into memory too, so it never touches disk.
Man, I didn't even think that was possible.
Yeah, so
Dave, all I can say is I think you're channeling HD Moore right now.
Sorry,
you just talked about that at about 4,000 words per second.
Sorry, it's so fresh in my mind right now, and what's driving me nuts is I'm running into a bug with. I'm gonna try to slow down. I'm running into a bug with PyInstaller, which basically I need to enumerate the base name that I'm launching it from, and you can't do that through PyInstaller. So I basically have to use Windows APIs to enumerate what my base address is coming from. So that's what's taking a little bit longer to finish, but it's working. I just have to knock out a couple more bugs, and hopefully it's out next week. And also add in a bunch of performance on the site cloner now. Clones much better on multiple websites. And what I'm trying to add, which I'm not sure if I'll have it before this release or the next, is when you send targeted emails out through spear phishing or through like the web attacks, it'll actually give them dynamic URLs every single time. And then when the user clicks on it, it'll record that and correlate it back to the email address that you sent it to, so that you can see exactly the individual that clicked on the link.
Man, that's great. That really is great. Before you know it, set's going to become too big for just Dave Kennedy, huh?
Never.
You have a team? You have a team working with you on that?
Right now, it's still just me, but Joey Furr and those guys have been kind of out of it for a little bit, but I'm sure they'll swing back in, and Trusted Sec is growing too. But
yeah, how are things going there?
Good. Total 4 employees now, which is really good. And
nice.
And another 1 or 2 people first of the year next year. Work is just continuing to flow in, and can't keep my head straight, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, congrats on that, Dave. That's nice.
That's cool. Did you hire an assistant yet to make your life easier?
I need to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not joking.
No, I hired an assistant. It was the coolest, best move ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris. I'm thinking about hiring Chris for my assistant.
Yeah, I'd be a good assistant.
I would not advise that.
Nor would I, for he does not send out proper calendar invites.
Yeah, I would actually suck as an assistant. Probably, I probably would make your life.
Probably, yeah.
I would make your life a lot worse. I think.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Chris, you always have a place with me, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I mean, you've been nice to me as opposed to Ping and Dave, which can't read email even though I can't use a calendar. So
Wait, did you just give me a compliment?
I did.
I think this is a new for the social engineer.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Oh, look, Jordan's even crying. No.
Do you know why? It's because there's no Bruce Hornsby playing.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
That's right.
Ping. Okay, so listen, before we get involved in anything else, we got to talk about something serious. Brad Smith, as most people know already, passed away just a few days ago. Brad was one of those guys that, for those of you who have not had the chance to meet Brad, he just would make your life better. And I'm sure as you look up stories on him and you see people talking about him, you get the sense that he was one of these people that just made you the most important person in the universe when he was talking to you. And he had a gift. He had a gift for making people feel important, making people feel good about themselves, always being positive, always looking at the best side of things. So losing Brad is a loss, man. It's a loss to not just his family and his friends, but it's a loss to the community. In my opinion, it's a loss of the whole world. The guy, he just did things that would really affect people in a good way. And talking to his wife, she's an amazing individual. Nina is a very strong person. And she's been through a lot in the last 13 months after Brad had his stroke at Hacker Halted. And the struggle back just took the toll. Eventually his body couldn't maintain it, so he gave out. Believe it or not, Nina donated his body to science because Brad said he wanted to keep giving even after he had passed. So we're going to keep updates going about Brad as we can, as Nina is able to give us them and the situation. I think she's going to try to have some kind of service for him, for the community. Sometime, it won't be anytime soon. It'll be the next couple months, maybe. And I'm going to just pull it up right here so I can actually give you the exact URL for Brad's blog. It's bradthenurse.com. And there, it's an interesting blog. Anyone can post to it, but interspersed from all the posts, you'll see Nina's post about Brad's progress over the 13 months and things that occurred, and of course what just happened this past week. So if you know Brad or you have any feelings for him at all, just go to that blog and leave the family a little message if you can. Nina told me that his family, brothers and sisters, and his family, they go and they don't know the community, they're not involved, and they've gone to the site and they've seen this outpouring of emotion towards Brad, and they know that Brad was a special person, but going to the site and reading these things just confirms that he was that much more of a dynamic individual. And I don't want to be too much of a downer because it's a sad topic, but I just know we had to bring Brad up in this time. So, keep checking out that site, and thank you to all the people who have shot emails over to social-engineer.org about Brad, and I just want you to know that we have forwarded every one of those to Nina, and make sure that she knows that you guys are thinking about her. So please keep the good thoughts coming in.
He would be sorely, sorely missed. He was such a great guy.
Yeah, he really was. It's nice to see the support from websites like DEF CON and the tweets from the Black Hat crew and things like that are really bringing the message out to a lot of people at once about Brad. He, just a amazing individual, really. So this week we issued a blog post which we thought was really interesting, and it kind of had a humorous spin to it. At first, it was about a couple of prank callers that used very basic social engineering skills to get past. Oh man, I knew it was coming. I knew it. Thanks, Ping. And they were able to get information on.
Dave, we're talking serious here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this guy. Hang on, how do I get Jordan back on here?
Sorry about that. Is this the one where the lady actually?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring this up because at first we posted the blog post, and it was a funny kind of story. They used just basic SE skills to get past the receptionist to get to the nurse and make believe. And they were Australian, so they didn't even have like a real accent. And so it really shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have fallen for that, and they did. And it had a little twist to it, so we thought it was humorous. The unfortunate part is that the nurse that took the call was so. This is the news story, at least. She was so distraught over her mess up that she committed suicide. She has 2 children and a husband that she left behind. So. This is a learning lesson for all of us. We talk about social engineering. It can be fun. It can be funny at times. But when we do things that can be malicious, and we do it in a way that it harms people, then it can lead to very disastrous consequences, like it did for this poor nurse who ended up killing herself. We quickly made an update to the site. I had a lot of people that were emailing me that, from the UK that were like, this didn't end up as a joke. So we did an update on the site just to let everyone know that, unfortunately, that did end so bad. It's still, that people are saying, maybe she had problems beforehand that led her to that choice. Regardless if she did or not, the end result is that prank made her so distraught that she took her own life. So, it kind of brings us back to the whole theme of like what we teach in our course and what we've been talking about in the newsletter and the podcast is if you make people feel better for having met you, then even if the social engineering engagement goes south, then there's no negative consequences for it. They may be a little embarrassment, but that's about it. You're not going to leave people feeling devastated and distraught, and that's where negative types of social engineering come in, and they can have really, really adverse effects, like it did in that case. It's a sad story. Again, the week was kind of filled with all negative stories, but it was something that we can learn from, at least for when we talk about social engineering. So, let's see. We'll talk about some other things maybe at the end. We have a really interesting guest today. Her name is Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's a retired FBI profiler. She spent most of her career studying criminal minds. She worked on some of the big cases that we probably all heard of, like the Green River Killer. She worked on the Zodiac serial murder case. She also worked on a bunch of famous disappearances, the Columbine shootings. Her work has been and the BAU, the Behavioral Analysis Unit in the FBI, in trying to profile and figure out psychopaths and figure out how they think, what their next move will be. So we're going to invite her into the podcast now and then just talk a little bit about her work and then what we can learn as social engineers from her.
Is that where Robin Dreeke is?
Yeah, so Robin Dreeke is in the BAP, the Behavioral Analysis Program. He's like the director of that. So he actually would be, if she was still with the FBI, he would be the guy who trained her.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But they know each other. So I'm sure in that circle, you end up knowing everyone that does what you do. Okay, so we have our guest with us now, Mary Ellen O'Toole. How are you doing today, Mary?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
So we were just talking a little bit about some of the things that you worked on in the past. Maybe, actually not maybe, I'm 100% sure you can probably tell us better what it is exactly that you did for the FBI and some of the cases that you worked on.
Sure. I was an FBI agent for a total of 28 years, and for more than half of that time, I worked as what's known as an FBI profiler. And in that role, contrary to what people see on TV, we do a lot of work with very violent crimes, and it really runs the gamut from serial murder to bombings to arsons to robberies, child abductions, any crime that was committed against, whether it's a family member or a stranger, it's a crime of violence, and sometimes it's serial, which means it repeats over and over again. So my work was quite varied, and some of the cases that I worked on were very high-profile cases. Some cases are still ongoing. So, again, unlike what's on TV, we don't solve things in an hour and wrap it all up and walk away and come home. Some of the cases that I worked on were the Elizabeth Smart case out in Salt Lake City, the Natalie Holloway case in Aruba, the Casey Anthony case, the Green River murder case, the Derek Todd Lee serial murder case, the Unabomber case. So those are a few of the examples of some of the more high-profile cases.
Yes, I'm very hard. So I think the big question is, do you have a private jet like they do on TV?
Do I have a what?
A private jet. You know, on TV, the team always flies around.
Yes,
yeah.
that would be no.
Yeah.
We have no jet. You mean a jet airplane?
Yes, yeah.
No. And, it's just amazing to me when people ask me questions about how close different programs are to the real work, that eventually we'll start talking about how we got around. And there are some people that honestly believe that we have a private jet.
Yeah.
We have a private jet, but not for people as low down in the organization as we were. The jets are really reserved for emergency travel by the director of the FBI or an emergency on a case. And I think it was maybe 2 times in my whole career that I flew on an FBI airplane to get from point A to point B, and the rest of the time we take commercial airlines and sit in airports because we've missed flights or we couldn't take the next flight out, so we travel just like everybody else.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So how do you go about profiling a person? I mean, when you have a case that comes in, what's the methods that you use to try to figure out how that person's thinking?
Well, the first thing is people use the term profiling to mean generally that we come up with a personality assessment of the person. It's a white male. He drives an old beat-up truck. That's kind of the I guess the general myth about what profiling is. But in reality, it really covers a wide range of expertise. So, for example, when I would go to work, I could pick up the call and I could get a police department on the phone who said, "Okay, we have a serial murder case." Okay, fine. Where are you in the investigation? And sometimes they would say, "Look, we've just started. We have absolutely no idea who the guy is that's killing." Okay, so now we're starting from the beginning, which means that what they probably will need, and I'll find that out when I'm talking to them, is what we call an unknown offender profile, which means that they send me all the case materials. Sometimes I go out to the crime scenes and look at the scenes, but I review everything: photographs, victimology, medical examiner's report, and from all of that information, and that can take weeks to do that, I come up with a personality, kind of a blueprint of the type of person that could have committed this crime. Not, this is John Smith who lives at 703 South 14th. But sometimes the department will call and they'll say, "We have a pretty good idea who it is. We've got surveillance on the person. We're getting search warrants ready. We think we're going to be able to bring him in for an interview. We just don't know how to interview somebody like this." Okay? Different strategy now. Now we're going to develop a personality assessment. You know the name of the person you're looking at. Tell me as much about him as you possibly can, and I will work in developing the best interview strategy to go in and get the kind of information that you need. So that's a totally different service that we provide. And then sometimes they call and they say, "Listen, we're getting ready to go to court. We need to know how to present this evidence in court so that the jury will understand it." And that's called a prosecutive strategy. And once again, very different from the other two I just described.
So I have a question, which is, I know that Chris Sumner, who's a current Black Hat speaker, and he's been on this podcast before, I know that there's some research existing to try to correlate whether or not people can use social networks to determine the level or if someone's a psychopath. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Okay, let me make sure I understand your question. To use social networking to identify a sociopath, a psychopath?
Yes.
You need to identify who out there in the world could be psychopathic?
Yes.
Okay, very good question. And the answer to that is more than likely no. Psychopathy not sociopathy. People get those terms confused. Sociopathy is a term that was used more than 30 years ago. It was thrown out. The new term is psychopathy, and what that is a personality disorder, and it's defined by 20 traits. It's been studied for more than 40 years, so we've got some great, solid data on what a psychopath is. We also have a test for psychopathy, but the test requires that you sit down across the table from someone, do an interview with them, and you do what we call collateral or a file interview. You find out as much as you can about their background and not just base your assessment on what they tell you. It is a very complicated process. And unfortunately, what we've done is we've kind of reduced the assessment for psychopathy to a very casual meeting. So I've heard people say, well, I can just look at someone and tell they're psychopathic. No, you can't. Or somebody will say, I can just see how they interact with people, and I can just tell. No, you can't. And so the ability to size someone up and then define them as psychopathic can't be done in one meeting. It's very, very complicated. Psychopaths come off as very charming and glib people, but so do a lot of other people. So when you're looking to assess for psychopathy, it does require a lot of background and training, and you have to look over a period of someone's life, not just when they're 40 years old and you meet them at a Christmas party. You have to go back and look at what they were like as a teenager in their 20s and 30s, because psychopathy does begin to emerge when someone is in their mid to late teen years. In other words, those behaviors, a pattern of behavior begins to emerge that shows those 20 traits, and that pattern does not go away. It stays with the person until the day they die.
Is it something you can do to like just list the 20 traits quickly, or are they too complex to?
No, I can list some of the 20 traits right now, and people can certainly get them on the internet. But the key to this is to not listen to these traits that I'll give you, and then go back and say, well, you know, I have a boss at work, and they're just a jerk, and they must be a psychopath.
Yeah.
So we urge people not to do that, because yes, you may have a boss at work who's a complete jerk, but when he goes home or when she's with her family, she's warm and loving and has all the other great traits and characteristics a feeling, kind-hearted person does. So I would urge people to not label others with this, because it's a very serious label to put on someone, and it really can do a lot of damage. Some of the traits are as follows, with the hallmark of psychopathy being someone who has no guilt or remorse for what they do. So if they go out and they kill somebody tonight, if they cheat on their spouse, if they kill their own children, they walk away and they have no remorse or guilt for what they do. These are people that have very little empathy for other people. They cannot walk in your shoes, and they're not concerned about walking in your shoes. And a guilt, that trait of compassion and empathy is really so critical. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us have that ability to bond with other people. Psychopaths are high on impulsivity, which means they only momentarily think about the consequences of their behavior, and they move forward. The rules don't apply to a psychopath. The rules are here in society, morally, socially, and every other way. The rules are here for us, but not for a psychopath. They're very grandiose people. And some may use the word narcissistic, and that's fine if you want to use that, but they're very grandiose. The world revolves around them. These are people who don't take responsibility for their actions, and they blame others. These are people that are very glib and charming in general. They can talk about a broad range of topics, but not deeply. But these are the folks who, when they walk into a room, they can light up a room.
So
They're also pathological liars. They will virtually lie about anything and everything. They have no loyalty to anyone, only to themselves. So if a psychopath goes to work for corporate America, would would they be susceptible to selling the formula for Coca-Cola to a competing company? Absolutely. In their juvenile or growing up years, some, not all psychopaths, but some have an extensive juvenile and criminal record, which includes antisocial behavior, and it also can include probation and parole violation. That's not the case if you have a white-collar psychopath. The white-collar psychopaths, those are the people that go into more high-functioning jobs, may not have that kind of juvenile, antisocial, or criminal behavior.
That's interesting. So, like, people like Jeffrey Dahmer, he was obviously a psychopath, right?
He had some psychopathic traits. I don't believe he was ever tested officially, but he a lot of people believe that he had psychopathic traits.
So I remember reading an account after he was arrested, and some of his neighbors didn't even want to believe what they were saying about him because he was so charming and so nice that people just liked him. People generally just liked the guy, and then they found out that all these horrible things he was doing. Even at that point, some people still didn't want to believe.
And isn't that the case when you pick up the front page of the newspaper after a major crime or event that occurs someplace? The first thing that reporters talk about is the infamous next-door neighbor. And that neighbor usually reports one of two things. They were such a nice guy, or they really were a loner. And you and I, we all know that descriptions of people go well beyond those two descriptors, but those are the ones that reporters in the media seem to default to. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I mean, I've talked to a number of serial killers and rapists and child abductors, and they can be as charming and as nice as you can imagine. They can have a great sense of humor, very engaging, and I have to remind myself, don't forget what you already know, Mary Ellen. You know what a psychopath is. So you can see how easily, with this combination of traits that fall together like a cluster of grapes, so you don't cherry pick these traits out, they fall together. With some of these traits, they really do make for a successful businessman. They do make for a successful law enforcement officer or a politician or a lawyer, you name it. These traits, you can look at them and say, well, gosh, they would make for somebody that could be very successful out there in the working world, and you would be right about that.
So is there no such thing, I'm not sure if I missed this or this was unclear or whatever, is there no such thing as a sociopath anymore? They're kind of all rolled into psychopath now? That's like the same thing?
Well, I'll answer it like that because it's such a confusing area. When people use the term sociopath, like I've heard many people say Jeffrey Dahmer was a sociopath, and what they're really meaning is that he's a psychopath. But I think if we wanted to be clear in the understanding of the disorder, the first thing that's important is a sociopath does not have all of those traits that I've just listed. And when the people in my world use the term sociopath, what they're referring to is someone that has grown up in a maybe more of a crime culture, like organized crime or a gang culture, something like that, and they've learned to be criminal. But if you brush that criminal experience away, that there's still a good possibility that these individuals have a conscience, have the ability to empathize. It's just that they learned from their the way that they were raised and the behavior that they were expected to participate in to act in very antisocial ways. The real distinction is that psychopathy has empirical data to back it up, and the hallmark is that these people are hardwired differently. The evidence, the research now with psychopathy suggests that this disorder, this personality disorder, has a genetic link to it. And there's not a pill or a therapy that you can take to change someone who's psychopathic. That's not the case with a sociopath or someone who, another term I've heard used that's out there is an antisocial individual.
So, because probably those words get overused so much, I was actually on a plane and there was a magazine. I was reading an article, and this one researcher that wrote the article actually made a link in between psychopaths and expert surgeons. You know, saying that someone who's like the best surgeon in their field has the same exact personality profile as a psychopath. And now, after hearing some of the things that you said, that would qualify that person as a psychopath, that seems to be generally untrue. I mean, they may have some of the traits, you know, like they brought out one thing that they kept talking about, which was a surgeon who was really good stops viewing their patient as another human being, but as a project. And that way they can do the things they need to do, like cut into them or make decisions that may end their life or end a certain quality of life just to keep them alive. And, you know, a psychopath has similar traits where they don't look at that person as a human being, but as an object. But it seems like there's so much more depth to it, like from what you said, even just the few points that you brought out already, that there's so much more to being a psychopath. That really it's not something that anyone could identify just by looking or even interacting with a person without some training.
That's right. It really is very it's reckless to say that, for example, a surgeon whose job requires distancing himself or herself from the patient so that they can operate on them and cut them up and take things out and put things in. Of course, they have to have that cool, level-headed ability that they're trained to be. They're trained to be scientists. The difference is when that surgeon goes home to his family or to his friends, is he still objectifying people?
Right.
And then that's the key difference, is that maybe for your job, whether it's a police officer or a surgeon, you have to have that cool, low, kind of very strong ability to distance yourself and not get caught up in the emotional connection to the people that you're working with. But you can turn that off. A psychopath does not turn that off. And it's also important for me to point out that the estimate is about 1% of the general population is psychopathic. Most psychopaths are men. It's a much smaller number for women. About 10% of the prison population is psychopathic. And so when we start looking at professions and saying surgeons or law enforcement people are more psychopathic, it's kind of it's an ill-informed statistic to say that. And when I hear things like that, I think to myself, well, I don't think this person is really well-versed in the whole area of psychopathy, because that's just simply not correct.
Do they ever say why there's such a huge difference between men and women?
Well, right now the research primarily has been done on men, on male psychopaths, and so that now is changing. But there are other disorders that seem to capture almost the female version of that, which is one of them is borderline personality disorder, and not to be too technical, but I think as more and more research is done, I think, and as it continues, I think we'll be able to see if the numbers sort of catch up with each other, or if men still have the outnumber the women when it comes to psychopathy. And there really is an aggression component to psychopathy, and the aggression component is much more consistent with males than it is with females, at least today as we know it. So that's also another basis for the differences in the numbers, is that level of aggression. And when you see violent crimes, whether they're committed by a psychopath or a non-psychopath, when you see aggression, you don't see, if a woman's committing it, you don't tend to see the same degree of aggression. Now, is that catching up? Are times they are changing? Yes, they are. But you still see most violent offenders are males.
Now, what do you think is the main cause from your experience that you've seen? I mean, all of the psychopaths that you've actually had the chance to research. I mean, do you see a commonality between the cause? I mean, is it just mental illness, or is it certain traumatic effects?
No, psychopathy is not a mental illness. and you don't diagnose psychopathy, you assess it. Psychopaths they're not clinically crazy. They're not out of touch with reality. They know right from wrong. So that's a really important distinction, is that they do know right from wrong. And again, the current research is suggesting that there is a genetic link to psychopathy. So, and that's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people to swallow, because that means it's generational, or it can be generational. Now, let me help you look at it also in a little different way. Nature and nurture are the old influences that we all grew up with and understood would make us who we are today, and those are still important. Your nature is what you got from your parents and them from their parents, and nurturing is how you were raised, and those influences as you began to grow up. With psychopathy, what we're seeing is that if you have an individual who does have psychopathy, and then they also have they become sexually deviant at an early age, and end up turning out to be like a Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't kill because he was a psychopath. He killed because he had strong urges of sexual deviancy, and you put that combination together in one body, and that's a very dangerous individual. But someone who is psychopathic and has strong urges of sexual deviancy, the amount of psychopathy that they have is much higher than someone who is psychopathic but doesn't have the sexual deviancy. So we know that there are people who go to work every day wearing a three-piece suit, and they may be very high up in an organization or politician even, or run a country. They can have psychopathic traits. Their psychopathy is probably less genetic and more from their nurturing. So again, this is something we're still looking at, that's still being researched, but on the test for psychopathy, a perfect score is 40. You don't want a 40. Most people will score on this test about a 4 or 6. A sexually deviant psychopath, like a serial killer, will score in the mid-30s. A white-collar psychopath will begin scoring in the high 20s. And just keep in mind, 40 is a perfect score.
Yeah, not perfect, but not really a good thing, huh?
Yeah.
Gold medal for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you that's not a test you want to ace.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking, man, I would like to take the test just to see, but I'm almost scared,
Is there actually anyone that has scored really, really close, like in the high 30s?
Oh yeah, there sure are. And the ones that these would be people that would be currently incarcerated, who have scored that high. Yes.
So, like people like John Wayne Gacy, I don't know if you know anything about if he was tested or not, but would he be up there like a 40 or?
Yes, John Wayne Gacy, I do not believe prior to his death that he was tested. I don't know that for sure. He was in an Illinois state prison, and I'm not aware of whether or not they used the test. It's called the PCLR test, which stands for Psychopathy Checklist Revived, the PCLR test. I don't know if he were tested, if he were given that test. I would know in that case, as I know it, I would conclude that Gacy would have been somewhere in the low 30s to pushing up towards the higher 30s.
So what is maybe someone that would be known that would be like a 40 or really high?
The ones that I know have tested really high, I wouldn't be in a position to tell you their scores,
okay,
because it is considered a confidential test.
Yep.
That's why I was saying, if you're looking at someone who is in prison right now, who's in there because they've been convicted and found guilty of very sexually deviant, ongoing crimes, then for a long, long period of time, and they also seem to evidence traits of psychopathy. They're going to score much higher than, say, if you take a white collar criminal and put him. He's been charged, arrested, and convicted. If he took the test, he's going to score more in the high 20s. You don't really, and we don't want to really split hairs here, just in terms of. Someone, I get asked sometimes, well, what if somebody scores like a 22, and then what about him? Well, psychopathy is dimensional, and what that means is this: it's not a taxon. So you don't hit a score on this test where, okay, now Chris is absolutely a psychopath because he hit this score, and anything above this score is a psychopath, and anything below this score is a non-psychopath. It's a dimensional disorder, which means similar to blood pressure. We all have blood pressure, right? But there's a point at which some people's blood pressure is becoming so high, they are considered individuals with high blood pressure, even though we all have it. So go back with psychopathy, we all have some of the traits some of the time. But when you start getting up to a lot of the traits all of the time, and again, dimensional, then we would say the correct way to say it is that this person likely manifests traits of psychopathy, as opposed to saying this person is a psychopath, because the only way you can put that designation on somebody is to really sit down and give them that paper and pencil test.
Right, because I guess if someone has a mental disorder, right, and they go to get help and they're diagnosed as someone's like a borderline narcissistic personality disorder, does that automatically make them that they're probably going to have psychopathic tendencies? Well, no, you've just named 3 different disorders. You've named borderline personality disorder is a distinct disorder. It stands on its own. Narcissistic personality disorder, again, is a distinct disorder. It stands on its own. And psychopathy is its own personality disorder. Okay. People that have psychopathy also tend to be very narcissistic. So and people do get that mixed up. But you've mentioned 3 separate disorders. So, 2 plus 1 plus 1 doesn't equal psychopathy. Psychopathy is its own very distinct personality disorder with very specific traits and characteristics. And it is the only personality disorder that has been studied in the laboratory with numbers, with empirical research. The other personality disorders that are still out there and used by the mental health professionals has not been studied the way psychopathy has been studied. So those coming to the conclusion that someone may be a borderline personality disordered individual can come mostly from anecdotal reporting of that person, of what their life is like. That's not the case with psychopathy.
Now, switching gears a little bit, you mentioned in your book, one of the things I saw on your website is that there's people, we trust our gut when it comes to other people. And that's not actually really a good idea, which is weird because everybody's like, I go with my gut. Or even wealthy businessmen are like, I go with my gut. My gut says no on this. I'm out. Or whatever, like in Shark Tank. I watch a lot of that show, obviously. And so there's a lot of people that say that, and a lot of successful people do that. But you say, hey, actually, this isn't really the best move. Can you explain why?
Sure. What's the TV program that you watch?
Oh, it was Shark Tank. It's a show where like Mark Cuban and Damon John, these successful entrepreneurs, get pitches from other investor or potential startup guys. And usually they have a reason for not wanting to be in there. But a lot of times they say, my gut says that you're not going to execute on this. Or my gut says that you're not the kind of business partner I want to be with, so that I don't want to invest. And I hear that a lot,
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've not seen that program, but using that as an example is really a good example. If you're an experienced entrepreneur and you have been investing in startup companies for a long time, and you've seen what works and you've seen what hasn't worked, a lot of that experience is almost subconscious because you've had the ability or the opportunity to work in that field for a long time. And so when you're making decisions about yeah, I don't think I'd go with Payne. I think maybe I'll go with Jordan. And you're in your area of expertise, when that person uses the phrase, I'm just going to go with my gut, what they're doing is defaulting back to probably a lot of experience, but it's just kind of a catch-all phrase. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's kind of like Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, where the expert knew the statue was fake, but he couldn't say why. And then all these other experts get fooled, and it turns out the first guy was right. And it had something to do with this minute, nuanced thing that his subconscious brain must have picked up on, but nobody else saw.
Well, sure. And if you go, let's say you are an art, you look at what's real and what's phony, art, and you've done that for your career, and you come up with a paint, and you're looking at a painting, and you're saying, well, my gut tells me that it's not, this isn't the real deal. But you're somebody that's looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of paintings. For you to go with your gut or use that phrase is more, again, it's using a very common phrase, but you're actually probably pulling from all those years of experience. So you're not just relying on some nebulous barometer inside your stomach. You're not really just throwing the dice. So there's a big distinction there. And what I was saying in my book is this. When it comes to dangerous people, that's my area of expertise. I have seen people over the years that I've been in law enforcement, more than 32 years, tell me, if they survived, that the reason they got in the car, or the reason they started to date, or the reason they let somebody into their home was they deemed them not to be a threat. I didn't think he was going to hurt me. But these are not people who have years and years and years of experience in deciding who's dangerous and who's not. These are housewives. These are men that have maybe accounting. They go to work to be accountants. These are nurses. These are people that don't have my kind of experience in dealing with dangerous people. And so they'll make their decisions using the phrase, I went with my gut, and then you say, well, where do you get your experience sorting out who could hurt you and who may not hurt you? Well, I don't know. I've never had any courses, never had any training. That's when going with the gut is dangerous. That's the big distinction.
Because you trick yourself into thinking that you have some sort of credible evaluation on your hands when really you're clueless as ever. But you're like, well, my gut says this, and my gut never steers me wrong, which isn't true. But It's like that confirmation bias where people who walk by streetlights and they go out think that they're doing it somehow.
Exactly. And I've also heard people say, well, some of the things that Mary Ellen says in her book is just common sense. You don't open your door to strangers. If I told you how many cases that I had with very smart, very well-educated people who opened their doors to strangers and never lived to tell about it, you would be stunned. Now, are these people, these smart people who became victims, are they just, was it their mistake because they didn't have common sense? Absolutely not. And there are many, many smart people everywhere who are in horrible relationships, very abusive relationships. Did they enter those relationships early on because they deemed their partner to be potentially violent, even lethal to them? Absolutely not. And yet you look around and you see how people make bad decisions about others, not because they're hoping to get killed down the road, or they're hoping that they have their life savings stole from them down the road, but they just don't know what factors to use to size up who's going to take advantage of them or hurt them and who won't.
Part of our jobs are to see if employees would take actions that they shouldn't take.
Okay.
For example, like click a link on a phishing email or give a stranger information about the company that they shouldn't give. And not that these people are malicious. That's not what we're looking for. But there's a vulnerability there that we can then help the company build educational resources so the employees realize the dangers of taking those actions. And many times for us, it helps if we can interact briefly or even observe a group of employees and figure out something about their personality or figure out their communication style or something to that effect quickly. And that helps us to know how to make an approach. And I was wondering, with all the years of experience you have in serious profiling, like the stuff you just talked to us about, if there were any tips that you had in using some of those skills to do quick profiling of non-psychopathic people.
Well, good question, and here's the way I would answer that. I'd be wary about doing something too quickly before I would put a lot of thought into it. And what you're talking about is, for example, what are the traits and characteristics or interpersonal styles that would allow someone to click on a site before they use good judgment? What would be the traits and characteristics that would cause someone to put out information unmaliciously, but still information that could compromise their organization? What are the traits and characteristics that you see in people that do that you're looking for in new employees, or you're going to address when you do some training? And then, so the first thing is to one of the first things is to recognize, do people see that as a problem? Do they see that as a bad thing to do? And if you have a group of employees that don't see the problem with doing that kind of behavior, nope, it's not a problem. Not a big deal to put out information on Facebook that is about the company. That's not a big deal. That's one problem. If you've got an issue where someone overall lacks good judgment, that's another issue. If you have someone who does it because the hell with the company, I don't care, I'm going to do what I want, that's really another issue altogether. So it really comes down to taking a look at the kinds of problems that exist in like particularly the organizations that you work with. What some of the more commonly common mistakes, and what are some of the common reasons for those mistakes? And that may take like doing a mini research project to see from current onboard employees, what their feedback is, because if it's a common problem, but it's one where people say, well, screw you, you can't tell me what to do, then the way to approach it or the way to recognize it is going to be for looking for people who have that attitude of, I don't respect people in authority, you can't tell me what to do, I'm going to do what I want, kind of a rogue.
So are there certain personality traits that could identify? See, a lot of times when we're doing this, we won't really have interaction with the employees before we actually launch, and I hate to use this word, it sounds so negative, but launch the attack. So, and in a physical setting where we may be going into the building and interacting with secretary or the front door people or security, it's helpful to be able to say, oh, look, I see this person does this. Maybe that means that they're this type of an individual, and I can try my approach with these types of things that may make it easier. I'm not sure if there's an equation like that you've been able to use to where you can look at someone and determine the type of person that they may be. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the DISC style.
I am, yeah.
Okay. Like that type of communication profile, and like being able to determine just really quickly in interacting with someone if they're a DIS or C, and then that gives you a whole roadmap of how to communicate with that individual to build rapport quickly.
No, I agree with that. I think using something like that to see what they are and and then be able to communicate with them in a way, in a manner that they can and will be receptive to, is the way to open the door to that person and for them to be able to respond back. But I would say the DISC does not capture the individual behaviors beyond what you're talking about. So the DISC doesn't capture whether or not someone is going to be a risk taker. It does not capture if someone is going to be have poor judgment. It's not going to capture whether or not somebody knows the rules are there but they don't follow them. It doesn't capture if someone is really impulsive, acts and then thinks later. So that the DISC will help you to sit down across the table from someone, but at the point where this person has this either their personality or has this way of kind of continually getting themselves into problems, that's probably not going to help fix it. You have to go more to, why did they do that? Did they make a foolish mistake, or is this a pattern of behavior, or is this really a personality flaw, and they're likely to do it again?
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Some of the stuff you brought up is really new for many of us. We don't really deal with it, but it's very interesting. Are there websites that list more information that you think it doesn't take the wrong path? Actually has right research into those 20 things that you mentioned about psychopaths, or the identifiers between sociopaths and psychopaths, or things like that. Websites that people can go and read more instead of just like typing that in and then going to Wikipedia and getting all the wrong info.
Sure. Dr. Robert Hare, spelled Hare, like the rabbit, is considered the world's expert in psychopathy. And he has a website. Just put in his name and you'll come up with the website. And he has a lot of really, really good information, very specific to psychopathy. But that's an excellent resource. Your listeners can also go to the FBI's Law Enforcement Bulletin. It's a journal that comes out every month on different issues or crime problems that law enforcement would be interested in. In July of this year, the Law Enforcement Bulletin was written by about 10 of us, and it's strictly on the area or in the area of psychopathy. And it's written for everyone to read and understand. I think it's excellent, and your readers can access that online as well.
That's excellent. And then what about you? If they wanted to follow you or find out more information about what you're doing now, where can our listeners go to get information about you?
They can go to my website, which is www.dangerousinstincts.com, and I have a Facebook page, and I'm on Twitter. So they can follow all of that at my website.
And what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is just my name.
Okay. A lot of people ask that. We have a lot of listeners that after they hear the podcast, they'll go and try to find the people who are on the podcast on Twitter, because they like to follow and see what things you're doing. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's good. You know what? I'll put something out on Twitter as soon as we hang up, and that way it'll be there for anybody that would like to, follow up or follow along.
Thank you. And I take it now that you're retired, you offer some of your services as a speaker or a trainer on these matters too?
I do. I'm actually busier now than I was when I was an agent, but I do speaking, and I am going to actually probably start up some Dangerous Instincts workshops.
Excellent.
So people can come and can sign up, and we're going to talk about how to evaluate behavior and what to look for in everyday situations, because I think that's where most people have the problems, and that's where everyday situations start out so innocently, and then before you know it, they can become heartbreaking. So that's the next goal here is to start those up, and then again I do a lot of teaching, and then I do do have appearances off and on different cable networks, CNN, Fox, and CBS.
Excellent. That's really, really helpful. And those workshops, I think, would be very interesting, just from a security, social engineering aspect. Anything to do with behavior and studying that is very interesting to us. So when you release that, if you shoot me an email, we'd be happy to help you promote that when you have those workshops coming up.
Oh, thank you so much. I absolutely will be certain to do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting for us. This was a fascinating podcast. It's something, so we don't really talk about it too much, but we always get questions on it. And Ping and I were saying that TV probably has wrecked a lot of what we think we understand about psychopathy, because we go and you watch a show and then you think you know it because it sounds like it's so legitimate. And and then you find out, everything that you believe is completely wrong. So interesting to have that set straight.
And people throw the label around. You hear it thrown around in the media like it means nothing. It has tremendous implications, and it carries such consequences to it. And people end up being on juries or situations where they walk in thinking they know what that means, and down the road it can create a lot of problems. So my colleagues and I are really big on educating people about what psychopathy really is and what it really is not.
Yeah, it's a very, very important piece. I can imagine, especially as a layperson, being on a jury and you're hearing all these horrible things and you automatically label someone as a psychopath, how much that can be damaging in the way you would judge that person. So this type of education I can see as being something really important to even just lay people to understand the differences.
Yes, absolutely.
It really is. I appreciate you making the time to come on here today with us. I know it took us a while to get this scheduled and everything, so I appreciate your patience with that, and I'm sure our listeners will really, really enjoy hearing this, and they'll probably be reaching out to you with some questions.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
No problem. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome. Bye, all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
That was pretty interesting, huh?
Very.
Yeah.
Like different topics.
I actually enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones, actually, the few ones that I stay and listen to quite a bit and try to analyze, because she's got a lot of information. It's great.
Yeah, it was a different topic than we normally are used to. We don't usually go that deep into the negative psychology, but wow, how fascinating.
Interesting to understand how psychos think and stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean, when she was going through that list, I actually was thinking to myself, that sounds like Dave. But then I was like, no, she said don't do that. So, I had to correct myself.
Well, I mean,
I'm not going to even entertain that. Not even entertaining it.
But just remember, she said that when they do the assessment, most people, on average, a score of 4 to 6. And then, of course, the ones who are probably mostly in prison, we hope, are in the 20s. And then, of course, the ones who are definitely incarcerated are in the 30s.
Yeah, I mean, she's like John Wayne Gacy was in the high 30s. That's just crazy. That's like, oof, don't even want to think about that. I can't imagine working some of those cases and actually having to interact with these individuals and hearing their, you read the stories, but I guess it's not the same as sitting in front of them, and then I don't know how she sleeps at night. We should have asked her that question.
The public lies, though. Can you imagine?
I was thinking, I was going to ask her, were some of the guys really cool, and you feel like even you, without knowing what they did, would be like, wow, this guy's great, I should totally hang out with this guy?
Man, that's a great question. You should have asked that. That's a good one.
I know.
Because I had the thought, too, asking her if she ever had problems sleeping at night, because, I mean, sometimes you read those stories alone and they're disturbing. I can't imagine sitting with some of these people. I mean, she worked some of the heavy cases, and then you're sitting with these people and hearing these horrible things. And then you go home and you're like, how do you trust anybody? Pizza guy knocks on your door and you shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nuts. Okay, so let's see.
I'd have that same type of problem, man. Just having to deal with that type of stuff every single day, and then just kind of messes you up and go back home.
Are you being serious?
No, not at all.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't know if I should laugh at you, because then I thought, well, you're talking about your time in Iraq, and then if I laugh at you, I'm going to seem...
It's post-traumatic stress, though, right? I mean, you can get it. It doesn't have to be from a war situation. You can get post-traumatic stress from just the stress of your job.
Yeah, I have post-traumatic stress from these podcasts sometimes.
Well,
That's because you're a little girl.
I do. I mean, no, honestly, seriously, I do know a guy who used to be a forensics investigator, and of course, it was all mostly child pedophilia
Ugh,
cases.
yeah.
And he'd have to go and testify as expert witness, saying, all these things that this person did, and he actually had to stop, and because of the post-traumatic stress. I mean, he was on like medications to go manage all of it, and then he just actually couldn't function anymore.
Ugh, yeah, that's just horrible. Couldn't
Gross.
even. Yeah.
Horrible. Yes. That's why we need people like Mary O'Toole to weed out these people. Get them so we have a better understanding.
Yeah, seriously, I think that kind of a workshop would be amazing to be a part of.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, let's see, closing. I need to bring up a couple things that are new and improved. So we have a new training schedule up on the website. We have a course, the 5-day Pen Testers, Social Engineer for Pen Testers course. Actually, it's over for 2012, so 2013, we have a course in Ireland in April, and then we have one in Detroit in June. And hopefully, we hope, we'll be out at Black Hat in the summer, and then we'll be choosing another date in the fall, probably in the Virginia/Maryland area. So we hope that will be up on the website soon, but we at least have 2 or 3 dates up there now if anyone's interested in that. And this month, we're actually launching the new service that we just started, the Social Engineering Mastermind Group. Nice feedback on that. We have a lot of people that signed up for that. The mastermind group's almost full, so we just need to have a couple more slots open, but next week or so we're going to be launching that. And I think that's about it. Those are the major things that we have going on. So just keeping busy like everybody else here, seems like. You can continually check us out on social-engineer.org. Of course, our commercial site on social-engineer.com. Our IRC channels on irc.freenode.net at channel social engineer. In addition to that, you could keep track of us on Twitter. We're Human Hacker, which does all the .org stuff, and then we're SOC Engineer Inc. on our corporate side for Twitter if you want to follow us there. I guess we'll talk to you guys next month. Thanks. See ya.
Bah.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Holidays. Happy winter.
Enjoy the Jell-O and the candle parties.
Actually, you're right. I think this is the last podcast for 2013, isn't it?
I think it is.
Wow.
It is. Well, have a happy New Year and a wonderful Christmas and Hanukkah and all that other stuff.
All that other stuff. Thanks, guys.
Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa.
Hopefully, though, this isn't the very last podcast because we all know that the world is coming to an end on the 21st of December.
I don't believe it.
I don't either, but
I have lots of ammo, so I'm ready for it.
But wait, hang on. If the world's coming to an end,
you can end yourself.
what's ammo going to
There's
do?
the tidal waves coming over.
Yeah,
the
what
Eastern Sea.
What are you going to do?
I will shoot the tsunami coming after me.
Yeah, because bullets have been proven to be so effective against large waves.
Listen, has anybody even tried before? No one's even tried it. So give me a break.
Dude, if a tsunami hits Ohio, then the whole country's just screwed. Okay.
I would say by the time it reaches Ohio and goes over, the 13 other states that are in the way,
Yeah.
or 40 other states or whatever it is that are in the way, we have another problem on our hands.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. If a tsunami hits Ohio, you might as well just use that gun to end it all for yourself.
Word.
Yeah.
I'm not answering that. That's too much of a hypothetical for me. I mean, me shooting a tsunami is definitely within reason. The rest of you guys just said it's not.
What? A tsunami in
Well,
Ohio?
Jordan's going to fall off into the ocean because I'm sure that LA lays on some sort of freaking, fault line. I know Seattle's going to fall into the Sound. The whole peninsula will fall into the ocean when the tsunami hits.
Yeah, you guys over there on the West Coast, it's like that's just going to crack off and just go down. You might want to move inland a little more.
Well, it might just become an island, right? The island of California.
The island of California. Yeah, maybe. Maybe Utah will have waterfront property.
Well, they used to. Salt Lakes.
Yeah. Well, on that very positive and wonderful note, when the Earth doesn't end on December 20 whatever, we will be back next month, which is also next year. So we'll see you all then.
Awesome.
See ya.
Word.
And I'll learn how to use a calendar by then.
While I'm listening for answers. Sure, there's plenty policies, but no one follows standards. Thanks to all the folks who come to work with different lanyards. Mag stripes, watermarks, all your ARFID tags. But no one's really looking at my counterfeited badge. Even still, though, there's not a chance to see. You can tell by how I walk, I've got somewhere else to be. Cause I'm confident. Like I'm in a hurry. Like I've got work to do. Like I'm going places. Welcome one and all to this fun competition. Except nobody knows if there's any opposition. Face so friendly, smile disarms. Everything's good, no cause for alarm. Cause I'm like you, and likewise the same. But for you this is work, and for me it's a game. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying. Next round starting, believe that I'm no signal, my battery is finished. Hey, could I go and use your phone for a minute? Thanks, yo, I had to make a call to play it down while my rootkit exfilled your data to the cloud. Plan to stall, stand appalled, gotta take my time. Scanning all your systems, the ones you didn't wipe. Scamming y'all, I got terabytes of drives. Cannonball, in the dumpster when I dive. Black and white, all the info with the details. And what type of person really prints out emails? Still intact, all the sentences and questions. I mean, paper shredders really aren't that expensive. Yup, we want it all, the kit and caboodle. It's not that impressive, I just know how to Google. Found the CEO with the social network name, sir. Nope, it's dual core, we're just leveraging the framework. Welcome one and all to this fun competition. Except nobody knows if there's any opposition. Face so friendly, smile disarms. Everything's good, no cause for alarm. Cause I'm like you, and likewise the same. But for you this is work, and for me it's a game. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying. Next round starting, believe that I'm playing. Welcome one and all to this fun competition. Except nobody knows if there's any opposition. Face so friendly, smile disarms. Everything's good, no cause for alarm. Cause I'm like you, and likewise the same. But for you this is work, and for me it's a game. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying. If you know what I'm saying. Welcome one and all to this fun competition. Except nobody knows if there's any opposition. Face so friendly, smile disarms. Everything's good, no cause for alarm. Cause I'm like you, and likewise the same. But for you this is work, and for me it's a game. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying. Next round starting, believe that I'm playing. Know what I'm saying. Know what I'm saying. Give a thumbs up if you know what I'm saying.